In 2018, Todd Gurley signed a contract that made him the highest paid running back in NFL history. He was voted by his peers as one of the top 100 players in the NFL, surpassing players like Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, and yes, even his future Hall of Fame teammate Aaron Donald. It was Todd Gurley, not Jared Goff, not Aaron Donald, that was receiving endorsements from Carl's Jr. He was the face of not only the LA Rams offense, but the entire Los Angeles Rams. 7 months later, Todd Gurley's future in football would be in jeopardy. His coaches would do whatever they could in their power to really hide what was occurring behind the scenes, and the contract would be so detrimental that it effectively screwed any running back that would seek out a large contract for years to come. The team that he represented would cut ties with him, and now Todd Gurley will never play NFL football again. And this is the reason why. Break! As a kid, Todd Gurley was more interested in basketball and playing for Duke University than any other sport. Yet, it would be football that would constantly lurk in his shadows until he learned to embrace it. In Tarboro, North Carolina, where most people talk about Tobacco Road rivalries, primarily the Duke Blue Devils and the North Carolina Tar Heels, in the early 2000s, there was talk of a kid who at 6 years old was so athletic in Pee Wee football that coaches forced him to play with older kids. Todd Gurley would play with 9 to 11-year-olds despite being nearly half their age. And not only was he as good as the kids several years older than him, he was the star of the team. Yet after his 8th grade year, when it was time for high school preseason football camp, Todd Gurley's name wasn't on the sign-up list. "I wasn't going to play football," Gurley said. "I was just going to chill. I wanted to play basketball. I decided that's what I was going to focus on. I played football my entire life. I was tired of it and didn't want to play anymore." Yet Todd Gurley was destined to carry a pigskin, and fate stepped in. 5 weeks into the 2008 Tarboro High School football season, Todd Gurley was looking for a ride home from school and wandered onto the football practice field. The assistant coach made a point to embarrass Todd Gurley about not trying out for football, and it got under Todd Gurley's skin so much that he was at practice the following day. The offense was already set, so Todd Gurley played defense. Gurley stayed on JV through his sophomore year until the 2009 state playoffs, the first of 3 championships for Tarboro, when the coaching staff began to use Gurley's speed to cover kickoffs. Being the youngest of 4 children, trying to keep up with his older siblings, Todd had plenty of practice in running. He would run everywhere to catch up to his brothers, to get to the pizza parlor downtown, or when he met a kid older than him that he could beat him in a foot race. Growing up in a mobile home park and being taught to be thankful for all that he was given, there was no college or NFL football on the family television, as cable television was not a luxury that Darlene Simmons, Todd's mom, could afford. They always had the things they needed, Darlene said. "We didn't have big, expensive things, but he always had clean, pressed clothes, food, and a roof over his head. He always had friends and love. We stuck together through the good and the bad." What was picked up through the rabbit ear antennas was the local broadcast of Duke basketball. Shannon Simmons, Gurley's older brother, said, "We never watched pro football either. We didn't have the means to watch the games." The Tarboro High School basketball coach, LaShawn Jenkins, said after only spending a few minutes with Todd Gurley that your name is going to be on the back of a jersey someday. That jersey, though, wouldn't be a tank top version specific for basketball, as Gurley's jersey would have shoulder pads underneath it. After the 2A state football playoffs, where Todd Gurley showed speed during those kickoff returns, for his junior football season, he became a running back, along with playing defensive back. Todd Gurley would rush for 26 touchdowns and 1,472 yards while making 79 tackles, forcing a fumble, and he had an interception as well. He was named All-Area Offensive Player of the Year for the 2010 season. For his senior campaign, he scored 38 touchdowns with 2,600 yards, earning North Carolina Associated Press Player of the Year, and the Tarboro Vikings won the 2A state title, all thanks to Todd Gurley's 242 yards and 4 touchdowns in the title game. During the spring, Todd Gurley would craft his speed, running track for Tarboro, and would even place second in the state finals with a 10.7 70, 100-meter dash time. In high school, Gurley didn't forget about his first love, playing on the basketball team, and on most Sunday nights, he would eat dinner at Mama's Pizza with Tarboro High School's head basketball coach, LaShawn Jenkins. That coach served as a mentor to Gurley, encouraging him to work hard academically, and was the first person who told him that football could give him an opportunity to receive a college scholarship. Jenkins would tell ESPN that I saw something special in Todd on the day I met him. I've always told him he was destined for greatness, so I'm not surprised. He's lost some things and lost some people who were important to him. I think those are the things that keep him motivated and inspired, but more importantly, it keeps him humble. Gurley was considered a 4-star recruit in football, committed to the University of Georgia, and when he signed his letter of intent, he officially became the biggest thing to come out of Tarboro, North Carolina, since the actor who played Cooter on The Dukes of Hazzard. As a freshman, Todd Gurley rushed for 1,385 yards and 17 touchdowns. Yet his sophomore season was cut short due to ankle and hip injuries, but he was still honored with second-team All-SEC nods. As a junior, Todd Gurley was becoming an NFL top prospect and well on his way to being able to take care of his family. Things got rough, but my mom always provided for us, especially me, Gurley said during a 2014 interview on campus at Georgia. I've never had it as hard as my brothers and sisters. I was the youngest and the one who was spoiled. I don't think she understands how much I'm doing this for her and my family. When I make it, we're all going to make it, and I can see her not struggle anymore. During Georgia's season opener against Clemson, Todd Gurley had 3 touchdowns on 15 carries for 198 yards. He also returned a kickoff 100 yards for another touchdown. Those 293 yards broke a single-game school record, and suddenly Todd Gurley's name was on the Heisman watch list as well. Against Tennessee, his 208 rushing yards was the most in a single game by a Georgia running back since 1992. Draft experts started to put the name Todd Gurley, an NFL first-rounder, in the same sentence, but on October 9th, his stellar season as a Bulldog was derailed, as Todd Gurley would have to deal with the first of many obstacles that he would need to overcome in his volatile football career. The NCAA investigated Todd Gurley and determined that he had received $3,000 over 2 years for autographs and memorabilia. Todd Gurley had to repay a portion of the money received to charity and complete community service hours, and he would be suspended from play just for trying to make some sort of income while contributing to the millions of dollars of profit that the NCAA was generating off of him. Due to the NCAA investigation, Gurley missed games against Missouri and Arkansas, and when the ruling was officially announced by the NCAA, it was determined that he would miss 2 additional games. He would be eligible to return in Georgia's rival game against Auburn in mid-November. However, in that game against Auburn, Todd Gurley seriously injured his left knee, tearing his ACL and threatening his hopes for the NFL. Make sure you make note of this injury because we're going to have to come back to it very soon during his NFL career. Todd Gurley would finish his junior season with just 911 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns in 6 games before declaring early for the NFL draft. When Todd Gurley was in the game, he looked like the rare running backs of the NFL that could do it all. Just like Herschel Walker, who had led Georgia to the national championship in 1980 and won the Heisman 2 years later, Todd Gurley was also compared to NFL greats. Former Georgia Bulldogs coach Mark Richt said, "What are the best attributes of a running back? Obviously speed, agility, vision, and power, along with pass catching, route running, and pass blocking. There are a lot of things that go into it. If you took all of those things, he'd score high on all of them. Some guys are great at some of them, but not so great at others. Todd does everything really well." This potential was enough for the St. Louis Rams to select Todd Gurley with the 10th overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. Gurley worked hard to rehabilitate his knee, and on September 27, 2015, less than a year from when he tore his ACL, he made his NFL debut against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Todd Gurley, though, didn't want to wait any longer. He's making his NFL debut after being out with injuries.
With the Los Angeles Rams coaching staff taking it slow, he rushed just 6 times for 9 yards in his first game. The next week against the Cardinals, Gurley rushed for 144 yards in the second half alone, with the Rams beating the then undefeated Cardinals in a key NFC West divisional game. Then for the next 3 games, Gurley rushed for at least 120 yards per game, and against the Cleveland Browns in Week 7, scored his first NFL touchdown. By Week 15, he became the 3rd rookie in Rams history to rush for 1,000 yards during the season, joining Jerome Bettis and Eric Dickerson on a list of Los Angeles Rams greats that were able to do so. In Week 16, he joined Dickerson in becoming just the 2nd Rams rookie to rush for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He was named a Pro Bowler and to the NFL All-Rookie team and won the coveted NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award. In 2016, the Rams relocated to Los Angeles, and it took a while for Gurley to warm up. He finished with just 885 rushing yards that season. Then for the 2017 season, the Rams fired Jeff Fisher and hired the great Sean McVay, and the offensive prodigy's game plan for Todd Gurley would completely change his career. In week 3 against the San Francisco 49ers, Todd Gurley had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing with 1 receiving. He rushed for 113 yards and caught 5 passes for 36 yards. For September, he was named NFC Offensive Player of the Month with his 140 receiving yards, 241 rushing yards, and 6 touchdowns. In week 4 against the Dallas Cowboys, he again totaled over 200 yards and was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Against the Seattle Seahawks in week 15, Gurley again earned NFC Offensive Player of the Week honors when he had 4 touchdowns in the win against Seattle. He earned his second Pro Bowl nod, and in week 16 yet again was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week and NFC Player of the Month for 2 receiving touchdowns on 10 passes for 158 yards paired with 118 yards on the ground. His 114 points in 2017 were the most by any non-kicker in the league. McVay's workhorse in a middle school type of offense earned Todd Gurley the 2017 NFC Offensive Player of the Year, and Gurley was rated as the 6th best player in the NFL by his peers in the NFL Top 100 list, joining players like Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Carson Wentz, Julio Jones, and Le'Veon Bell in the top 10, beating out his teammate Aaron Donald, Drew Brees, Von Miller, and Aaron Rodgers in ranking that year. This was enough for the Los Angeles Rams to sign Todd Gurley to a 4-year, $57.5 million contract extension with $45 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid running back in the NFL at the time. And ultimately, this is where things would unfortunately get dark for Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley would score the first Rams touchdown on Monday Night Football against the Oakland Raiders to kick off the 2018 season. In week 2, he scored 3 more rushing touchdowns, but he wouldn't slow down there. In week 6, Todd Gurley carried the rock 28 times for 208 yards while scoring 2 touchdowns in a 3-point win against the Denver Broncos. Afterwards, he was rewarded with the NFC Offensive Player of the Week honors. In October, he earned NFC Offensive Player of the Month for his 9 touchdowns. In week 10, he had scored touchdowns in 13 straight games and had 2 late touchdowns in week 12. The LA Rams would clinch the NFC West behind Todd Gurley for the 2nd year in a row. Then, suddenly, it seemed like Todd Gurley ran out of gas. Gurley would miss the last 2 games of the 2018 season due to knee inflammation. Still, Todd Gurley was named to his 3rd Pro Bowl and an All-Pro, and was a major reason that LA was advancing to the playoffs. In the playoffs, Gurley would put up 115 rushing yards in the divisional win against the Dallas Cowboys. But something strange was happening, because in that game, Todd Gurley was not the workhorse back. In addition to Todd Gurley, the LA Rams also had CJ Anderson complimenting him. In the infamous 2019 NFC Championship, where the headlines were dominated primarily due to this blown pass interference call, another underlying story was the fact that Todd Gurley was not only held to just 10 yards rushing, but he only carried the football 4 times. But needless to say, the LA Rams were still riding high, advancing to the Super Bowl in an overtime victory. The Los Angeles Rams' prolific offense would get stopped by the defensive tactician in Bill Belichick in one of the most boring Super Bowls in recent memory, losing to Tom Brady's Patriots in the Super Bowl 13-3, with Todd Gurley only rushing 10 times for 35 yards. There was clearly something very wrong with the running back, as he had just totaled 30 carries in the entire playoffs. But things would get way worse from there. 1 month later, during the 2019 NFL Draft Combine, the LA Rams coaching staff discussed what moves they needed to make in order to keep Todd Gurley fresh. Within a month, it was reported that Todd Gurley had arthritis in his left knee, the same knee that had been surgically repaired after tearing his ACL in 2014. I don't know exactly medically when you categorize what arthritis is, but I've never seen a guy on the medical report or on the injury report with that, said Sean Sean McVay. And I think if you just said, is there a wear and tear? Was there a pounding that knee took? Absolutely. He's the only one that can really talk specifically about how his body feels. The writing was on the wall that April as the LA Rams would draft running back Darrell Henderson in the 3rd round and share with the media that it is a move that wasn't necessarily made to replace Todd Gurley. But then, Todd Gurley was not around for OTAs, and by June, articles are published that Todd Gurley won't be a every down bell cow running back anymore. Regardless, Todd Gurley shows up for minicamp but does not participate, and in interviews he calls his knee injury small compared to an ACL tear. By July, Sean McVay tells media that Gurley is ready to go but sits out the preseason, which is not unusual for a star, but when team captains are named in September, although he was voted on by the players as a captain in 2016, 2017, and 2018, he was not named a captain during 2019. Todd Gurley was not the same running back as before during the 2019 season, and perhaps the Rams did not use him nearly as much as they should or could have. Gurley would fail to reach 100 yards rushing through 8 games and was 29th on the list for rushing yards when just a year before he was the leader. He almost reached 100 yards in week 11 when on 25 carries he rushed for 97 yards and a touchdown while catching 3 passes in a 10-point win over the Chicago Bears. By December, head coach Sean McVay called himself an idiot for not using Gurley more as the Rams were out of the playoff race. On December 31st, when LA Rams general manager Les Snead was being interviewed by writers and asked if Todd Gurley is the same running back as he was in past seasons, Les Snead said that this year he wasn't. Gurley finished the lackluster 2019 season with just 857 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns to go along with 2 receiving touchdowns. In February of 2020, Sean McVay said that the team is working through a plan for Todd Gurley. Yet at the end of the month, the Rams are again interviewing running backs at the NFL Combine. In March 2020, Todd Gurley has an anything can happen mentality, telling Rich Hammond of The Athletic, like we said, football is a business, so anything can happen. But you've got to understand it as a player and not take it personally. You take it personal to a certain extent, but you also be grateful for whatever opportunity you've got. I know it sounds cliche, but you literally just control what you can control. As long as my teammates know who I am as a person and stuff like that, I don't really care about what other people think. The ones that know. All that stuff sounds cliche, but that's kind of how it is. In March 2020, Todd Gurley unfollows the Rams on social media, and by the middle of the month, it is reported that he is being offered on the trade market. Then on March 19th, 2020, the Los Angeles Rams officially released the former Offensive Rookie of the Year, a player that was ranked higher than Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Donald in top 100 lists, a 3-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time first-team All-Pro. They cut ties with him just 24 hours before he was due a $10.5 million bonus. LA would take a $20 million dead cap hit spread over 2 seasons just to get rid of a running back whose left knee was likely a lot worse than everyone thought it was. 2 years ago, Todd Gurley was on top of the world. Now, the 6'1", 225-pound former All-Pro was unemployed at just 26 years old. The LA Rams couldn't even use him as trade bait as he was viewed by other teams as damaged goods. Even in the final weeks of 2018 and in the NFC Championship, and then of course in the Super Bowl loss, Todd Gurley was far from the dynamic player that would burst through coverage and score touchdown after touchdown. Then in 2019, the explosiveness had turned to snail speed, with McVay taking the blame for not helping Gurley find his rhythm, but spent most of his time skirting around questions about Gurley's knee issues. The Rams went 9-7 the year after they had advanced to the Super Bowl, finishing 3rd in the NFC West and a 9-7 record. It was a rapid fall from grace for both the LA Rams and their former star Todd Gurley, and sent shockwaves to any team that was considering paying a star running back millions of dollars. The Atlanta Falcons would sign Todd Gurley to a 1-year deal on April 6, 2020, worth $5.5 million with built-in incentives, bonuses that he would never achieve. Gurley would average around 15 carries and under 100 yards in his first few games before gaining 150 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns in a loss against Detroit in Week 7. His second touchdown in that game, though, cost the win for the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta was down 16-14 late in the 4th quarter and was then able to get close enough for a possible game-winning field goal. The ball was handed off to Todd Gurley, and all he had to do was not score. However, he scored with over a minute remaining in the game, which gave the Lions plenty of time time to win the game, a feat which they would accomplish. In 2020, Todd Gurley had 678 rushing yards on 195 carries and 25 receptions for 164 yards and 9 touchdowns, while averaging just 3.8 yards per carry and 4.2 yards per touch. In 2021, Todd Gurley became a free agent and was not signed by an NFL team. Now 27 years old, who was at once the best running back in the NFL, will probably never get another chance to carry a football, as his body is unfortunately much older than his age.